A little applause emoji. Yay! Emoji? Emoticon? What's the difference? I guess Apple owns one? I don't know. If you could see my
Apparently,
shoulders, they're shrugging. All right, great. Welcome to
you're
our
uncomfy here.
Unity Technologies presentation. As a technical front of house speech, I'm just going to go over and say that PXR 2020 would like to begin by acknowledging the support of the Canada Council and the Digital Arts Strategy Fund. I'd like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the stolen and unceded territories as the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations here in East Vancouver, BC. If you're starting out as an XR creator, you should be familiar with Unity. And as most of us were laid off this summer, you've probably already downloaded it and start playing with it, in which case, thumbs up to you. It's great. Smoldering his way in from San Francisco, we have Dan Miller here to my right. Dan Miller is from Unity Technologies and will show you how Unity can be leveraged by creators to create interactive experiences for new audiences. Now I'd like to hand it over. Dan, take it away. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Go ahead and amplify my voice there. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite, and I hope everyone takes away a little bit, learns a little bit from my presentation. There is going to be some time for Q&A after, so you can hold some questions there. I will be around for a little bit, but have a lot to cover, kind of doing a bit of a broad approach, diving in a little bit on how to get started. So let's go ahead and do this. Yeah, my name's Dan Miller. I do post a lot of content. I'm fairly active on Twitter, so if you guys are interested in some AR and VR content in Unity, you can go ahead and follow me there. But let's just dive right in. So the agenda for today is we're just going to be giving a high-level overview of Unity's XR platform, some of the updates and things that we've noticed, and really what that enables, which are things like the XR Interaction Toolkit. So this is a toolkit for getting started with AR and VR. We're going to be covering a little bit on the VR side today. Next, I'll dive into some XR creation tools, so some tools actually built with Unity for creating, as well as some other ones. Talk a little bit about where to get those, how to get started, and some of the capabilities. From there, I'll give a bit of an overview for 360 video, how that can be used, and then I'll dive into spatialized audio. And again, we'll have some time at the end for Q&A if you have any questions. So, really Unity as a whole, we are, a platform for creating experiences. And we've had a lot of success on the gaming side, so things like Job Simulator, Beat Saber, and Pokemon Go. And more recently, we've been really expanding outside of gaming. So we're looking at things like industrial applications, whether visualizing something in AR on the job site, or looking at a piece of furniture with IKEA Place before you buy it. And on the creation side, there's a lot of different applications in VR that can actually be used for just creating in general. A lot of these are in the 3D space, and you can, use VR to then create VR. So I'll be talking a little bit about how you can kind of export content, some of the features and capabilities of some of these apps that you see here, like, Tilt Brush and Gravity Sketch. So one thing we've noticed at Unity with the kind of augmented and virtual reality platforms is that there's a lot of shared features between them. So when you look at things like input, device tracking, different rendering and things like that. And we've also noticed that they continue to, kind of advance and release new features. This has been, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, in the AR and VR space, you're constantly seeing new platforms, new features, new capabilities. And so it's been in the past a challenge to kind of keep up with some of that. So what we've done on the Unity side is we've kind of broken this down into three categories. And first, we have the actual providers themselves. So these are kind of the specific APIs to the specific platforms. On top of that, we have what we call the Unity developer layer. And this is kind of this abstraction that allows you to kind of build once and deploy anywhere. So you're not looking at things like, the Oculus specific controllers. Instead, you can look at VR controllers. And lastly is packages. So the way that all this content is actually delivered to you is kind of a modularized system within the Unity editor itself. So this allows us to release updates, new features, and new versions at a much quicker rate than we could in the past. So you don't have to wait for an entire update of the Unity editor. You can just grab that latest up-to-date package, which we can ship a lot quicker. And so at a high level, it looks a little bit like this. We have what we call this XR SDK that kind of sits under the core engine. We have those platform providers, and then we output that development layer that you can then kind of build against. But that's not really a core part of this talk. I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit, talk about how we're keeping up to date with some of the platforms themselves, and really what this offers or what this enables. So a big part of that is the XR Interaction Toolkit. So this is a cross-platform toolkit that we're developing here at Unity. It is available now in a preview state, and it covers both the AR and the VR side. Right now, they're kind of separate entities, but there is work to kind of merge those together and make things a little bit more seamless between platforms, as well as we start to see different platforms kind of cover similar features. So as mentioned, this is available kind of in preview in a package. So if you enable preview packages in the Unity editor, you can find the XR Interaction Toolkit. And really, when we think of kind of the different toolkits out there, as well as a lot of the different platforms, we're trying to provide some of this base level functionality. And what do I mean by that? Well, these are things like physics interactions. So being able to grab and throw objects, having them track to your controllers, interact and manipulate them at a distance. We're also looking at things like native UI support. So this has kind of been a challenge in the past. There's lots of different systems on how you interact with the UI, using things like rays. And you see a lot of the kind of platforms themselves do this at the like OS level, if you're looking at like the Oculus shell, for example. Well, because we've, are also developing the UI system, we're able to kind of create this system that allows you to, interact with just world space UI. These are things like button, text input, toggles, etc. Kind of through this toolkit at this kind of distance there using what we call ray interactors. And last but not least is locomotion. So this is the ability to kind of teleport around, just like the features we have available here within AltSpace, where we can kind of move around. You can do things like snap to turn, etc. If you're interested in the XR Interaction Toolkit, I highly recommend checking out this escape room project. So this is a project developed by our Learn team. So that's the education team that does a lot of these tutorial content, as well as build up some of these sample projects. So this is actually available on our Learn platform. It walks through the different steps of how this project was put together. And at its core, it's a kind of stylized escape room where you're in a little environment, you're solving puzzles, and then you can kind of escape the room. But the cool thing is, as you can see here on the right-hand side, there's also an additional scene here of some more kind of realistic props. So with these props, you can do things like turn the hourglass over, manipulate a drill, and really this kind of serves as this learning base or this learning project on how you can start to understand to create some of these more complex interactions using the XR Interaction Toolkit. So highly recommend checking this out. You can search the Escape Room VR Unity or XRI Escape Room, and this will all kind of come up through our Learn platform. There's also a blog post that kind of dives into some of the content there as well. So now I just wanted to give a quick kind of overview of what it looks like to get started with XRI. This will just give kind of a high-level understanding of some of the different pieces, how they fit together. So here I am in an empty Unity scene. And so the next thing we're doing is we're enabling these preview packages. So I talked a bit about what packages are from the platform level with the different kind of VR supported platforms. But really this is where a lot of our kind of functionality is moving towards. And one thing we've noticed is that, some things aren't necessarily let's say fully production ready. So the XR Interaction Toolkit is still what we call a preview package. So there's kind of a caveat there of, consider that there might be some breaking changes, there might be some updates to the API as it continues to get developed. But right now you can get started. We are also looking for lots of feedback on it. So once you enable the preview packages, then you can just search XR in your preview, in your package manager itself, and you'll find that XR interaction toolkit there. So you can go ahead and install that. The next thing you're going to do, and this is also kind of an inherent part of the package management on the XR platform side, is the XR plugin management. So this is a kind of package in itself, and this is how you enable and tell the Unity application as well as your builds what platforms you're building for. So once you've enabled that, then you're going to get a list of these kind of included Unity packages or Unity platforms. So you can click something like Oculus, and that's actually going to auto install the Oculus package for you. So one example here with the Oculus package is we've actually, at one point we had a separate package for the Oculus Quest as well as the Oculus Desktop. Now it's kind of unified into a single package here. And so once you've enabled XRI and you've installed that package as well as enabled the plugin management, then you're going to get this additional menu in what we call the Create menu. So when you're inside Unity, you can kind of right-click within the scene hierarchy, or you can hit that little plus button up there at the top, and that's going to give you a menu of things like primitive objects, and also this XR tab, which is now available once the package has been installed. So here's where you're going to get things like your, what we call a room scale VR rig, or a stationary XR rig, sorry. And what that does is that's the difference of, you know, how is your content tracked? Are you making like a seated experience? Are you making one that has, you know, full kind of what we call 6DoF tracking? And here you also get things like the teleportation area and the different ray interactors there. So if you notice up here in the upper left, this is kind of the structure of what the XR rig looks like. So it has the kind of camera offset where all the content lives underneath it. You have the main camera, that's what's kind of driving your display there. And then you have the two hand controllers as well. So we also have these what we call kind of generic controller models. So these are great for, you know, building applications for different platforms where they can work for things like the Index controllers or things like the Oculus controllers or the Windows Mixed Reality. And really what you're doing here is I've kind of adjusted these, and you're going to basically put them as child objects under these controllers. And you can assign them as prefabs as well to kind of dynamically spawn there. One thing to keep in mind always with controllers, you always kind of got to understand where their kind of pivot point is, things like that. Don't necessarily always line up between platforms out of the box. So here, the other small note I want to mention is right now when you create an XR rig, it's actually going to have a near clipping plane on the camera itself. That's kind of the basically near plane of where content gets clipped. And you should adjust this down to kind of the lowest value here, so 0.01. And that's what you typically see in a lot of VR games and applications where you can really put your hands fairly close to the camera before objects get clipped. So the next thing, once we've kind of set up these controllers, we've assigned this, now we can basically hop in. You'll have visuals for the controllers there, and you just have what we call these ray interactors associated with your controllers. From there, I've kind of I've just kind of scaled out the floor. We're kind of making just a base environment to move around within. And then we can spawn these locomotion system and the teleportation area. So two things to keep in mind with the locomotion system is it's basically going to kind of spawn as a large area here. This is where you have things like the mesh collider, which determines which of the area you can actually locomote or teleport to. So if you had some kind of restriction zones, you can also make just a smaller zone for that as well. And one thing to keep in mind with the locomotion system is you do need to assign this XR rig. So that's kind of a field within the system that you spawn itself. So you can kind of just drag in that XR rig that you've already set up. And then here, it also comes with what we call a snap to turn provider. So this is a way where you can use the joystick. It's available here right now. We can kind of just, continually rotate around by just moving that. All right. And this is kind of that base XR ray interactor that I was talking about. So one of the interesting things here is we have what we call this line type. So by default, it's just going to be a straight linear line. But we can also change this to this Bezier curve, And what this allows us to do is this is what you see typically used in a lot of these teleportation or locomotion systems. So it's kind of this curved arc, which makes it a little bit easier to kind of aim and manipulate as you move around. So that's kind of a adjustable parameter on these array interactors that come with the locomotion as well as the XR rig itself. And here's just kind of a little scene I put together, just various kind of primitives where you can just kind of move throughout. And at one point, this was kind of a GIF or a video of me just teleporting around, but this is kind of what you can see here. It's a little bit subtle, but the green ray there on its left, I have set to kind of a curve, and you can adjust some of the parameters there, and basically kind of manipulating around and moving throughout the space. All right, so that was just kind of a high-level overview of the XR Interaction Toolkit. Hopefully kind of, a couple takeaways to think about where, how you set up your scene, you get the XR rig, you get kind of the locomotion system, and how easily you can get up and running with just kind of moving throughout your space and stuff like that. Now what I want to do is just shift focus a little bit and talk about some VR creation tools. So obviously Unity itself as a platform can be used to create VR experiences. AltSpace here is created in Unity as well. But I wanted to talk specifically about some tools for some more kind of art or content creation. So the first one is Tilt Brush. So this is really kind of one of the most common ones, or really one of the early creation tools. So it's actually developed in Unity as well, and it allows you to kind of draw in a 3D space with a lot of these kind of more like 2D brush strokes that then you can kind of start to layer up. Now there's a lot of really cool kind of additional tools and functionality of how you make your content, scaling around, making these really large scale scenes. But one of the things that I think is most interesting is there's actually a toolkit specifically built by the Tilt Brush team. They're acquired by Google. And it allows you to export the content you've created in Tilt Brush and directly import it into Unity. So because the app was made in Unity, they're able to kind of create a bridge there. And there's actually a lot of these things with the kind of special shaders and the special kind of rendering of how their content looks in Tilt Brush, and then bringing that directly into Unity. So I've seen some people create, entire short films or do some kind of early iteration or prototyping using Tilt Brush, bringing that into Unity, and then adding some additional functionality. There are a lot of tutorials on YouTube available for this, so I definitely recommend checking those out on just kind of how to get started, how to start creating with Tilt Brush, some kind of pro tips and things like that. The next one is Gravity Sketch. So this is also created in Unity. This is available on some PC platforms as well as available on the Oculus Quest. I should note that Tilt Brush is available on the Quest as well. And this is more of more what we call kind of NURB or subdivision modeling. So here you're looking at rather than doing certain strokes, you can also kind of create more generalized geometry. Now, although it's using kind of NURBs, not vertices, but this has actually been used heavily in things like automotive or product design. So they're able to kind of iterate different ideas. There's also some interesting things with co-creation. So they currently have kind of a closed beta here where you can have multiple people within the space all creating at once. So that's pretty interesting. And this is kind of, they have a full kind of product around this VR creation tool itself. And they also have some support for 2D creation with things like the Wacom tablets or iPads. So next is Microsoft Maquette. So this is, again, built in Unity, still in beta, but what it is it's more of like a 3D or a spatial layout tool. So this allows you to create a lot of these primitives, build up certain content, change colors, change scale, and really kind of mock up these different scenes within VR. It can be used, or you can see here, it's kind of used in both an AR and a VR context. And you can, again, import the content you've created in Maquette directly into Unity. So kind of, really streamline that process when you're ready to do things like, adding additional functionality or things like that. So the next one is Medium by Adobe. So this was actually originally created at Oculus. Adobe acquired the team that develops this, and now they've actually recently kind of re-released it as Medium by Adobe. So it is only supported on the PC Oculus platforms, but this is really looking at what we call digital sculpting. So before, when you're thinking about different paintbrushes or strokes, this is really thinking about more manipulating things like clay. So you can kind of add, adjust and make different geometry here. And they do also have some export functionality to pull out, in this case, OBJs. So this you've really, from Medium itself, you've seen some really high fidelity sculpts. You can see in this screenshot that I have here. And there's been a lot of people that actually have sculpted something within Medium and then go and get it like 3D printed. So really turning that kind of digital into physical itself. There also is things like vertex coloring and stuff, so you can actually, color your creations as well. All right, so that was kind of a little bit on the tool side, on how to start creating content more in this kind of 3D spatial space. And now I just want to talk a little bit about 360 video. So if you're not familiar, 360 video is just a format of video that allows you to kind of completely be immersed within the video itself. There's both stereoscopic and kind of flat 360 video. And what I've seen a lot, especially in kind of the performance space or things like film festivals, is people are starting to use 360 video as kind of a layering technique, where you might have a really high fidelity, really nice video of, let's say, a sunset, and then you start to kind of layer in different 3D content into that. And you really use that as what we usually refer to as kind of like a skybox. So that's kind of the edge of what's rendering around your space. So in Unity, we've supported 360 video or just native video for a while, ever since 5.6, which was kind of back in 2016. We support for 4K and 8K video. So this is kind of what you need when you want that higher fidelity, especially in things like VR. And it is hardware accelerated on platforms. So the codec right now is the H.264, and that kind of offers that best compatibility between the platforms itself. And did I skip one? Nope. And the video can be played back in different ways. So when you're thinking about or talking about just normal video playback, you can do it on things like a camera plane. So it's kind of a full screen video for the user. You can also do it on a render texture, a material texture, or really just any texture within a material or a shader itself. In the 360 context, you're usually looking at something like the material texture or a render texture that you're then applying to a kind of shader for the skybox itself. And when thinking about these videos, especially when you're talking about VR 360 videos, those can get really big. So there are different ways to kind of have your video sources within the Unity application itself. So you can embed it within your game. That's going to kind of compile it within the binary itself. You can also load it remotely from a URL. So you can actually kind of stream this in from an externally hosted server. And you can also stream it in within Unity itself. So there's something called the streaming assets folder, which just kind of does get shipped alongside your application, but doesn't necessarily have to be fully initialized or loaded at the start of your application. And then last but not least is asset bundles or addressables. This is a way to kind of dynamically deliver content to your runtime application, heavily used in mobile devices where they kind of ship you a very small binary and kind of build it up over time with different levels and things like that. All right, so the last thing I just want to kind of briefly mention is spatialized audio. This is really important for a lot of immersive applications when thinking about, where the audio is coming from, how it's sounding, really ups the immersion. And yeah, so within Unity, we do have just generic 3D audio, and there are settings within the audio source itself. Now, if you don't include what we call a spatializer or don't include a spatialized plugin, it will basically take the position of the audio, and if it's on my right-hand side here, I'll hear it out of my right ear. If it's over here, close to my left one, I'll hear it out of my left ear. If you include a spatializer plugin, then you'll hear it out of both ears. You'll just hear it much louder out of whichever ear it's closest to. So without that, you'll just hear it from one ear. With the spatializer, if it's over here on my right-hand side, I'll hear it mostly on the right, but a little bit on my left, and that really allows for that kind of full spatialization. So off the bat, we ship with Microsoft's HRTF spatializer and the Microsoft spatializer itself. So this works on the kind of mixed reality platforms, allowing you to go in and lay out your spatialized audio. There's also the Oculus spatializer audio, which works on the Oculus supported platforms. Again, you're kind of laying out different settings and conditions, where your audio is, what size type of source it's coming from. And then last but not least is Resonance Audio. So this is developed by Google. Originally, it was kind of targeting just their Daydream platforms, but they've opened it up and made it really cross-platform. So it's actually probably the most widely supported spatializer plugin. It has different things like setting kind of material properties. So you can do things like, a wood floor or a concrete wall, kind of adjusting and defining how the audio is moved throughout. And this last thing I want to mention here is, this is something that just got released very recently here by Anastasia, and the Apple AirPods Pro actually has an API that they released really recently in the iOS 14 version of their operating system, and it actually allows you to track the head position of the AirPods in what we call 3 degrees of freedom. So you can do rotationally tracking the head itself. So this was a little video of her kind of moving back and forth, and you can see that cube moving back and forth as well. So she actually created a Unity plugin or a wrapper for this API itself. So this is a native iOS API that allows you to link in and then start to create interesting things by understanding the head rotation and position of the user using AirPods. So that's available there. You can find her on Twitter, and she posted that plugin there on GitHub. And that's it. So that's pretty much it for the presentation. We definitely have lots of time or a bit of time for some Q&A. So if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer those. So thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Dan. That was amazing. Poor Sarah's stuck in the floor. Hopefully you're doing okay down there. If anyone does have a question, I'm going to please check to see if you are muted first off. Let's go a little bit anarchy. Yeah, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and scream it into the void.
I have a question.
Yes,
Okay, my question
Frank.
is, first off, let me say thank you for the talk. And Unity, I've been using Unity for a long time, and it's really come a long way since 5.4, so really good job. My question is, with all these kind of emerging, new devices and ways that the devices are used, things like hand tracking and eye tracking, a lot of different companies are using these different technologies. How closely are you guys kind of like working with, the Facebooks and the Microsofts and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, good question. Sorry, I was grabbing a drink in real life there. So the question was basically, with a lot of different new technologies, new platforms, how closely are we working with companies like Facebook or Microsoft to kind of work together? And the answer is, Facebook and Oculus and Microsoft are actually some of our biggest partners. So we work really closely with them. They use us a lot, both internally as they develop, their own tools, as well as, when you think of the platform providers themselves and you think of Unity, they really value our partnership and we really value their partnership. And it's about bringing more developers into the ecosystem and really enabling these different features. So as I'm sure you're familiar, hand tracking was shipped on the Oculus Quest, and early on there was a developer preview to enable hand tracking when developing within Unity and within the editor, and they actually enable it kind of through the Oculus link. So yeah, we work really closely with them, and what we try to do is kind of understand some of the partners and the platforms and their roadmaps and align those with some of the tools and things we're doing. So, understanding that, hey, tracked hands, which is a perfect example, is becoming a really important factor with a lot of these different platforms. How can we on Unity enable that and allow people to create with that easier while hiding some of the complexity? If you want to create with hand tracking, you shouldn't have to worry, are you targeting this platform or that platform or something like that? If we can kind of create a bit of an abstraction on top of that or enable that in a similar way, that's really what we're trying to do there. So I hope that answers the question a bit.
Great. Anyone else? If you have gestural capability, raise your hand or pick up your hands. Anyone? Yes, Peter. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna amplify your voice too. Or start speaking right now. Let's see what we can do here.
Yes, I was wondering, is there a site or anything that you would suggest to do some training with?
Yeah, are you referring to just kind of general Unity training or something more
Yes.
specific to? Okay, yeah, so I usually recommend our Learn platform. So I think it's learn.unity3d.com. We've also started to incorporate what we call in-editor tutorials. So if you download the Unity Hub, there's some additional content that we call microgames. So you can search microgames. There's a good one that's kind of a karting style microgame, and that actually walks you through some of the fundamental kind of concepts and terminology within Unity. So I always really recommend that. I mentioned the XR Interaction Toolkit has kind of a piece of learned content as well. And really what I found is if you can kind of have an idea in mind, if it's a kind of small scope project, once you understand some of the terminology, how do I, enable a rigid body, to roll down the ramp or, something like that, where you can know some of those kind of fundamentals, then you can really start to, kind of Google or search for the correct answers there. But I definitely recommend the Learn platform and those in-edit tutorials through our Unity Hub as kind of a getting started point.
That's great, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Toggling between all the things. Great. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes, Jason?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to just echo what you just said about the learning platforms, Peter, because you were asking the learnings, the tutorials and whatnot that Unity has put out there are really, really good. I got my started with their famous Rollerball tutorial, and they've recently reissued that just on their YouTube channel. So like it is very learnable, and and all the answers are there. Like I'm using YouTube all the time as my learning platform. Like there's a lot of users out there that are sharing. So like don't be intimidated. But the one thing you mentioned, Dan, about find a project that you think is something small you can start with. The emphasis on the word small. I can't tell you how many things I've decided to just try doing, and I find out like nope, way too big. The scope is just huge. Like pick something really small to start with, and it's the feeling of accomplishment is greater if you actually finish it. That is all.
For sure. Thanks. Frank, did you have another question?
I did, yeah. So a few years ago, Kimmy West actually went on stage and showed off. I think this was in the HTC Vive days when that was first. Kimmy, okay. She unveiled that Unity had been creating a editor in VR. So I'm curious, is that still a thing that might come eventually? I tried it. I got to try it. It was pretty cool. Is that still happening, or is that still being talked about?
Yeah, that's it's actually really funny you brought this up. That was actually re-released and is now available as a package. And I want to say that was last week. So it
Wow.
It has kind of been to be perfectly frank, there was some kind of resource allocations towards other platforms and other tools, but it still has kind of been continually worked on. It was actually re-released and recently updated. So if you search, it's called Editor XR. So they added a little bit new kind of paradigms for different kind of UI and interaction. But there is now a forum post, I believe, that announces all of it. But yeah, it was actually really recently kind of re-released and put into a package so that it's a little bit easier to get access to and enable. So yeah, Editor XR is the name there.
Thank you.
Yep.
And anyone else as we come to the near end of this final day of PXR? Anyone else? Questions, comments, experiences? Bueller. Is that the right practice? All right. Whoop. Do I see
could ask one
Frank?
more, I guess. I do have another question.
Frank
I just feel
again?
like I'm
Great.
hogging all the
Great. Let's
time,
bring it
though.
back up again.
Do it, Frank.
So in the kind of VR space, I see there's two kind of major engines that can be chosen, Unity being one of them, Unreal Engine being the sort of other one. How much do you kind of like look at what is being done over at Unreal and kind of like apply it to what you do, or do you do that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think, as a whole, we're always, doing some competitive analysis at some level, paying attention to, what's happening in the space. I would say more on kind of the VR, the AR side, we're looking more towards kind of community platforms, things like VRTK, as well as other toolkits and things like that. But, really we're always trying to create an easier platform to create more easily and kind of enable more creators. So yeah, I think it's something we're always kind of keeping an eye on, trying to listen to feedback, iterate, and improve the existing product that we have.
All right. Well, we technically have 5 minutes left, so Dan, is there any closing words you'd like to bring us
Well, I
home
was gonna
with?
say, did you want to ask a question here?
I did. Thank you, Dan. First of all, thank you for coming and doing this presentation also. One of the things that I find from Unity is I've heard, and I haven't dabbled with it, but that there are a lot of possibilities of what you can download. For guidance on how to do that, on picking the right package, what is it that you suggest?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, I guess where to get started. There's lots of different versions of Unity and things like that. Typically, depending on what application you're building or kind of where you are in the production stage, we have what we call the LTS, or long-term supported version of Unity. And so that's supported for 2 years. We backport fixes and things like that. The LTS version that's out today is 2019.4. So it's at the kind of end of our release cycle. So as we get into, or once it becomes 2021, we'll have released a 2020 point. It'll probably be just 3 LTS. But yeah, usually we recommend building on top of the LTS versions, as that's going to be the most stable. So that's where you'll also find that difference, as I mentioned, with preview packages. So we have both preview and then verified. And verified packages are versions of the package that have gone through kind of the entire QA cycle. So at a high level there, the kind of official recommendation would be, download the LTS version of Unity and build on top of verified packages. Now the kind of, Dan caveat over here is, in the AR and VR space, there's lots of stuff that's continuing to advance and continue to be released. And some of that is only available on, kind of beta, or what we call tech streams within the editor itself. So I find myself working within the tech stream or in a beta or an alpha even sometimes. And certainly I've been using a lot of preview packages. But as far as stability and all that, we recommend verified packages. So hope that answers that a little bit.
Yeah, Dan, and for the secret sauce coming down the turnpike, anything that you are allowed to reveal that we can look forward to? I mean, Unreal just came out with that amazing video of their new possibilities, and just wondering what you guys are doing in conjunction with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say just kind of stay tuned. We're constantly trying to improve our technology and release, interesting and new features. We're certainly working with a lot of our partners and things like that for, additional platforms and stuff. So, yeah. And then, did you have a question back there?
More of a, whoops. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, more of a, I guess a call to arms or advocacy point in that while we're developing these sorts of technologies to try and be inclusive as possible. I have friends who are creating and learning in spaces that are for dubbing and including stuff in multiple languages. And while they were using images to lip sync, they were unable to, they had to do a lot of modifications to be able to include Black bodies in this lip sync process. A lot of the programs are written without Black bodies and brown bodies in mind. We've seen this a lot in a lot of facial recognition technology where facial recognition does not work on those bodies, and then those people are not included within the development of those technologies, which in some cases might be good considering the militarization of facial recognition technology. But in general, when we're developing work, trying to include people who have different abilities. For instance, I was just in a talk where they're advocating that AltSpace VR be able to be used while in bed, so that people who are bedridden are able to use the program without having to sit up. So I would just say that while you're looking to help develop and create these new technologies, and to you as well, and that you include Black and brown bodies in this work, and as well as people who are differently abled.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent points.
And on that amazing note, I just need to note that we are theoretically at time. With that, we've wrapped. It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon Pacific time. That concludes this session with Dan Miller. Thank you again so much for coming out and speaking with us today. And also technically the end of day 1 of PXR 2020. So we made it, folks. We're all in the same shard. We're doing it together. We can hear each other. Amazing. Thank you again all so much for your patience and playfulness as we experiment and experience this together. For those of you who are interested, there is a snowball fight that's going to be going back on in PXR Central. So if you'd like to make your way over there, we can do a bit more jamming and see what the possibilities are. Otherwise, I shall see you all tomorrow. Again, we start our presentation day at 12:15 Pacific. We have 2 presentations running. One is Toasterlab's Toaster World, and the other is Nick Foxgig showcasing his Lightning Tool Kit. So please enjoy your evenings, enjoy your afternoons, wherever you might be coming from today. Thank you again so much for being out with us today. You've all been great. Go forth, be free, go jump some worlds and play.
Ha 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 ha!